The next few songs I'm going to talk about are from the legendary Machine Head album, which came out in March 1972. And track number 9 is the Deep Purple classic Highway Star. So, as some of you may well know, Highway Star is one of the greatest rock and metal songs ever. It's a song about fast cars that really gets your blood pumping and features peak musicianship from John Lord, Richie Blackmore, and Ian Gillan, etc. Song came about in Portsmouth 1971 when a reporter asked the band how they wrote songs. So Richie Blackmore grabs an acoustic guitar and began playing this single G riff, while Ian Gillan improvised some lyrics, and the band would refine the song and perform it later that night on a TV show. So many people had heard this song before it was on any record. The intro of this song is a bass guitar intro that's just over 30 seconds long, before it launches into the opening riff and then the vocals, etc. After the first two verses, you have a John Lord Hammond organ solo, which incorporates fast runs and arpeggiated notes with a late Baroque, early classical influence, and use of the harmonic minor scale. And this organ solo, which also incorporates chromaticism, lasts about a minute. After the third verse and chorus, Richard Blackmore comes in with one of the best guitar solos ever. It's based on a Bach-like chord sequence in the key of D minor, and features vibrato bends and fast arpeggiated runs. The ending of the solo uses tremolo picking, played with some fast speed and intensity. Now, the vocals throughout this song aren't as heavy as you'd think. Ian Gillan is actually singing rather light throughout this song, but you have about 4 layers of vocal tracks, which when combined with the music, makes it sound more heavy and powerful than what it actually is. And the screamy vocals in the pre-choruses are just reinforced falsetto. Track 10 has to be Deep Purple's most well-known song. It's the song called Smoke and Water. The song itself tells the true story of when the bands were on the road and recording the Machine Head album in 1971, and there was a fire at Montreux Casino in Montreux, Switzerland, which completely destroyed the whole place. Now, Deep Purple wanted to record the Machine Head album at this casino place, and Frank Zappa was playing there the night before, and someone in the audience fired a flare gun towards the rattan-covered ceiling, which caused the big fire. Now, when you say or think of the song Smoke on the Water, you immediately think of the song's monumental guitar riff. There are many legendary guitar riffs out there by the likes of Black Sabbath, AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, Metallica, Purple Thin Lizzy songs, and Nirvana, etc. But none of them riffs have had the same impact that Smoke on the Water's riff has. Like anyone who's even held a guitar can play Smoke on the Water in some way or another. And the only other riff like that I can think of has to be Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes. This legendary guitar riff was inspired by a piece of classical music called Beethoven's Fifth, and it's a 4-notes blues scale melody in the key of G minor. As well as Richie Blackmore's guitar playing, both John Lord and Roger Glover contribute some nice tight organ and bass playing. But you also have to give credit to Ian Pace for some great drumming throughout this song, especially with some cool drum fills just before the choruses. You also do get a pretty powerful vocal from Ian Gillan in this song. Like I said, the song is a story, and Ian Gillan, who has a little theatre background, knows how to tell a story in a song. While he sings pretty clean in parts, he mostly sings with an Alice Cooper-like tone, so he sounds really pinched and squeezed, which produces a great tone, but is not the healthiest way of singing, as it hinders both the range and longevity of your voice. The song made the top 5 of the US Billboard Hot 100 in 1973, and the Rockade Armenia version made the UK Top 40 in 1989, and I would strongly recommend you watch and listen to that Rockade Armenia version with all the different rock stars that are featured. Track number 11 on this greatest hits CD is also the last Machine Head on this CD, and it's the song called Space Truckin'. This is one of Deep Purple's most loved songs, and the song features great lyrics, great distorted keyboard playing, and great vocal performance. This song closes the Machine Head album and features a shorter than usual guitar solo by Richie Blackmore, but it's still rather groovy and upbeat. There is some killer drum playing by Ian Pace, which includes a drum solo after Richie Blackmore's shorter guitar solo, and along with a simple bass line, you have a steady combined groove, and Ian Pace shuffles on the snares and toms with brilliant speed. After the solo, we hear a chromatic build-up in the music, that progressively gets higher pitched until it returns to the main riff. The song you hear on the record and CDs like this is just over 4.5 minutes long. When it comes to performing this song live, they would drag this song out to be over 20 minutes long, and one of the most well-known live performances of this song is from the 1974 California Jam, where a pissed-off Richie Blackmore smashes up 2 guitars, a TV camera, and even caused a guitar amp to explode. Track 12 is a song called Woman from Tokyo. This is the only song of his greatest hits CD that's from the Who Do We Think We Are album, which came out in January 1973, and the song was written in the key of A major. It's a more poppy song that features an opening riff with arpeggiated notes and bluesy bass bends, but it doesn't feature a guitar solo. It does feature solid vocal and solid piano line that accompanies the main riff really well. Last thing I'll say about this song is that it's about a man's obsession with a woman from Tokyo. For the next 2 songs on this CD, we have a lineup change, as bass player Roger Glover got replaced by Glenn Hughes, who was in a band called Trapeze. And in terms of Ian Gillan's replacement, the band originally wanted Paul Rodgers, but he chose to form and continue with his new band, Band Company. So they ended up with a young unknown singer called David Coverdale instead, and this forms the Mark III lineup of Deep Purple. And the 2 new band members would add more blues and funk elements to Deep Purple's hard rock sound. So, the third to last song on this CD is the legendary title track from the Burn album, which came out in February 1974. Like the song Highway Star, not only is this one of the all-time great Deep Purple classic rock songs, but it's a high-energy album opening track with classical music influences. And I have to say that this song is a sound of a band that's been like reborn or re-energized. In terms of what the lyrics of this song are about, previous Deep Purple songs dealt with things about being on the road and current events at the time like the Cold War, etc. The song Burn, on the other hand, is about witches, witchcraft and Salem witch trials, etc. As at the time, Richie Blackmore wanted to write more mythological and demonic type lyrics. With the vocal performance on this track, it's great to hear a young David Coverdale going full throttle and making a big first impression, as, replacing Ian Gillan. No pressure, right? But you might notice he's a bit pinched and squeezed in the throat, and singing right at the top of his range. Whereas later on in Whitesnake, he was able to open up his sound and sing with a lot more range. Another thing you have to give David Coverdale credit for is how he was able to carve out rhythmically and melodically the lines that he did, considering how funky the guitar and drum playing is. Glenn Hughes, who is also another well-respected and influential singer, sings just before the choruses and in the choruses alongside Coverdale, and he also sings the bridges. Richard Blackmore performs a blistering guitar solo, followed by another section of 2 guitars harmonising triads reminiscent of classical music after the first bridge. And John Lord complements Blackmore's guitar solo quite well with his own amazing organ solo after the second bridge. With John Lord's solo, the end of the solo has been overdubbed with about 4 keyboard parts, which features an overarching solo melody played on a synthesizer. The second to last song on this greatest hits CD is the title track from the Stormbringer album, which came out in November 1974. This is a rather experimental song for Deep Purple, and I think it sounds more like the early Rainbow stuff like Stargazer, etc., rather than typical Deep Purple with that prog-like keyboard opening and militant riffing. The name Stormbringer comes from some novel that Michael Moorcock wrote, and Michael Moorcock is a writer who has also worked with the band Hawkwind in the past. And I think Stormbringer is a name of magical sword, so as you could probably guess, the song Stormbringer does stick with the mythological themes. The guitar solo in this song follows with melodic bends and arpeggiated lines, played in the key of B minor. The last song on this CD is called Knocking at Your Back Door. This song is off the Perfect Strangers album, which came out in October 1984. So this song is from when the Mark II lineup had the big reunion and recorded the Perfect Strangers album. And I think that might have been like the first big successful reunion of its kind, actually. Knocking at Your Back Door has to be one of my favourite Deep Purple songs, and it is a rather sexually fueled song with double entendre lyrics. It's great to hear that Deep Purple updated their sound to fit in a bit in the 80s. This song does feature a great synthesized intro, which is then joined by Roger Glover's bass, then Ian Paice on drums. Then the song properly kicks off. The song also features a good guitar solo, and bass player Roger Glover did actually produce the Perfect Strangers album. The last thing I'll say is that Ian Gillan seems to have more of a mid-range in his voice in these later 80s songs, which he didn't have so much the first time round in Deep Purple in the 70s. So that's the track by track done, and what a listen this CD has been the last few weeks. The CD does a great job of highlighting Deep Purple's golden years. The one and only downside of its greatest hits CD is that 15 songs is too short for a Deep Purple greatest hits. I definitely think they could have put a few more songs on here, like song Lazy, a couple more Mark III songs like Soldier of Fortune or Mistreated, etc. Maybe a couple more songs from when Deep Purple reformed, like the song Perfect Strangers, or one song from when Tommy Bolin or Jolene Turner was in the band. Despite all them things being missing, it still has to be one of the best Deep Purple greatest hits out there, so I strongly recommend this CD to anyone. Before I go, I really want to talk about what came out of Deep Purple. Not only were they a heavy influence on many other bands and musicians, but if it weren't for Deep Purple, we may not have gotten to know a couple of top bands and a plethora of legendary singers and musicians. When Ritchie Blackmore left Deep Purple, he would form the band Rainbow, and from Rainbow we got some of the best rock singers ever, like Ronnie James Dio, Graham Bonnet, Jolene Turner, and more recently Ronnie Romero. As most of you should know, Ronnie James Dio would go on to having a legendary career, and both Graham Bonnet and Jolene Turner would go on to sing with people like Yngwie Malmsteen and Michael Schenker, etc. Ronnie Romero has also sung for Michael Schenker, and Jolene Turner would briefly replace Ian Gillan in Deep Purple in the late 80s, early 90s. Many top musicians also came out of Rainbow, like drummer Cozy Powell, bass player Jimmy Bain, who was playing Dio. Another bass player was Bob Daisley, who was a big help with Ozzy Osbourne's solo career. Roger Glover would actually end up playing bass and producing albums for Rainbow until Deep Purple reformed. And Deep Purple's current keyboard player, Don Airey, was also in Rainbow for a couple of years. After Deep Purple was finished, David Coverdale and John Lord would form the band Whitesnake, and they would soon be joined by Ian Paice. And similar with Rainbow, we got to know many amazing musicians from Whitesnake. Again, Cozy Powell, but also you have people like Bernie Marsden, Mickey Moody, John Sykes, Adrian Vandenberg, and later on people like Doug Aldrich, Marco Mendoza, and Joel Hoekstra, etc. Both Ian Gillan and Glenn Hughes would go on to have their own respectable careers, both being involved with different solo bands and projects, and both would have stints singing with Black Sabbath in the 80s. Not to mention that Cozy Powell also had a stint with Sabbath when Tony Martin was the singer. So that's a wrap, folks. We've reached the end of our captivating CD review journey. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on my upcoming reviews, etc. Trust me, you don't want to miss them. This is Classic Reviews. Check out the 2 videos at the end, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.